Welcome to episode 203 of the Grip Strip Podcast. Here we go! Out of the playoffs edition of the Grip Strip Podcast. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm your host. I'm with my co-host, the iRacing Indy 500 champion, computer genius, a gentleman, and a scholar. And he raced in the US 500 and got his face in on the show itself. His name is Joshua Fine. What's going on, brother?
Yes, the Cowboys lost, but yeah, I did race in the US 500 on iRacing this past weekend, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. But good racing there. Good to be back on IndyCar in the officially in iRacing competition. So glad to participate in that. And yes, my face was on there. But of course, the playoffs this past weekend. Of course, a lot of surprising results here, but I think obviously the Cowboys losing, producing the most hilarious content, of course, with Stephen A. Smith mocking the Cowboys as usual, and of course he's on a big week anyways. But this playoffs here is pretty interesting, and of course right now we've got the Bucks up 13-0 over the Philadelphia Eagles, and they may fire their coach after this if they lose. So this one's pretty interesting to watch and see how that plays out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you got Philly. Well, he just made that big pass, and he might go to the house. Oh man, that tackle was huge. Devontae Smith ran a skinny post, and got around the corner there. But we're going to talk about all the games so far, and including this game that's going on right now, Super Wildcard Weekend. We'll also talk about coaching news, executives. Not really as much stories on the executives. I think all the ones that were gone or going to go are gone. Maybe. I mean, who knows? But we'll get into all that. We'll go and update everyone on the Chili Bowl, what took place in Tulsa last weekend. Dakar Rallies in the second week. Super Motocross ran in the muck in San Francisco. Formula E started their 2024 season in Mexico City at Hermanos Rodriguez Circuit. Talk about SRX ending up being postponed and probably done. IROC, though, is coming back with Ray Evernham, who was involved in SRX on the front end of it. And then Rob Kaufman, who's for whatever reason saved Michael Waltrip Racing, and then is the reason why freaking charters exist, for good or for bad. We'll talk about the Roar before the 24. That'll be coming up this weekend, which they'll be having practices and I think qualifying to determining certain positioning for the Rolex 24 at Daytona. We'll talk about all those. We will, and any other key news items. We'll talk about the divisional round. 3 of the 4 games have been determined. The 49ers will come off their bye week and play on Saturday night. The Baltimore Ravens will be playing on Saturday afternoon to start the divisional round. And then we'll get into the other matchups accordingly. We'll make our picks. I think I did pretty good picks wise so far this outside of the Detroit game. I didn't pick that one, but I picked Houston, and I went chalk on the AFC side, and I went for the lower seeds in the NFC side, and Dallas won, and or at least for Dallas, or Green Bay won against Dallas, and then I had picked the Rams, but they ended up losing close game to Detroit, and now we have Philly and Tampa. I think I picked Tampa.
You picked Tampa. I actually picked Philly. I might be wrong here, but we both picked Cleveland, and I said Cleveland would go to the Super Bowl, and obviously that prediction went up in smoke there, and then we both picked Buffalo, and I picked Green Bay, and you had Dallas. So actually, so
Did
far,
I have Dallas?
Yeah,
I thought I picked Green Bay.
No, it's not what you wrote here.
I don't know. I guess where, NFL. Josh picked Cleveland over
Yeah.
Houston. Oh, yeah, that's right, because you went Green Bay. I picked the other way. Oh, well. Kansas City. All right. Yeah, so got two. I was wrong there. Yeah. So, yeah, my picks went about as... So I thought I did better than I did. Oh, well. Whatever. We'll talk about all that, and we'll make our picks for the divisional round. Josh will let us know all things going on in the world of iRacing and gaming in his sim segment, and we'll call it a day. Let's start, though, with Super Wildcard Weekend. Start with that Cleveland and Houston matchup. Houston in their usual 4:30 spot on Saturday in the wildcard round, but it was CJ Stroud's first career start in the playoffs, and he did work all day. And the Houston defense made Joe Flacco pay. I guess Joe Flacco decided to become Joe Flacco again through 2 pick sixes. And that was essentially it. You know, C.J. Stroud played really, really well, of course. And that team in general, the crowd was lively. The energy was there. But Stroud got them going. And the defense went and put them away. And really, that was it. I mean, the Cleveland defense is the number 1 defense in the NFL, but they didn't show up on Saturday. You can make the argument that because of how Flacco played, that affected it. But, I mean, it was a shootout early in the game. I think it was 14-all. They were trading touchdowns early, and then the game turned on Cleveland turnovers. So, surprising, considering how Cleveland had been playing leading into the playoffs, adding the fact that Houston had to back in, so to speak, to get into the playoffs after all the carnage that went on in the AFC South. But D'Amico Ryans had his crew ready. CJ Stroud was ready for the big time, proving once again that with NFL and scouting and in terms of player evaluations, probably are just a bit overrated with some of the things they use. And I bet you the Carolina Panthers wish that they had drafted C.J. Stroud. But and then also Will Anderson actually made a couple of plays there as well. So the number 2 and number 3 overall picks in the NFL draft made a difference in that playoff game. Did you see anything else, anything that really stood out to you out of that game? Other than Cleveland just kind of going and melting down in the second quarter on.
Well, I mean, I think, that really the kind of the start of that meltdown was the Browns giving up that touchdown in the second quarter, that long touchdown the Texans scored. I think that was the start of the meltdown there. Of course, Larry Tunsil just body bagged Myles Garrett throughout that game, and he definitely put him in a box there and never let him affect the game. Myles Garrett's been a game record this year, kind of one of the favorites for defensive player of the year, but unable to go and lock that up for Cleveland there, and it's going to be interesting to see how Houston does in the playoff. They're going to go up against Baltimore, who they lost to in week 1. So kind of a circle round of the season, if you will, for both of those teams now, with both of them playing extremely well, especially for the Texans and everything. And obviously the score, factors in with what Joe Flacco giving up, 14 points to the Texans there. You just can't do that in the playoffs. The first one, they really just had to make the tackle, which they failed to do on the pick 6, and plus pressure really affected Flacco on that throw. And then the second pick just completely telegraphed it, going for it on 4th down, and threw it right to the linebacker who went and took it to the house. So, once that happened, game over, of course, and the Texans go on to the second round. Browns stay home, and I think for me, I guess making that pick with Cleveland, was really leaning into the defense being the number 1 seed are the number one. I thought they could have been the number one seed, but the number one overall defense in the NFL this season. But of course, when you take them out of Cleveland, they performed pretty poorly on the road. So maybe I forgot to factor that in. Of course, wanted to see Joe Flacco, an elite quarterback in his heyday. Wanted to see him go out and take them to the Super Bowl because that was, in my mind, the only way that this season could end. When one of the ugliest seasons that we've seen yet, and what better way than one of the more uglier quarterbacks in the league in terms of his play over his career, and the ugliest team in terms of aesthetic with their uniform and their history generally there in that city too. So just wanted to see that just to make a fitting ending, but of course that's not going to happen, which is okay. We'll see now, Baltimore or San Francisco more than likely. But yeah, that was definitely a interesting game in the first half, and then just got away from them, the Browns and Texans in the second half of the game.
Yeah, just as Baker got hit, and he had a shot there that was, I think is that Godwin? Yeah, or no, that was K-Dot, and oh man, he was wide open. That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I'd also pick Cleveland. And in the end, they didn't perform. They weren't ready for that game, I guess, or they weren't ready to stay with Houston in a shootout, which, to be fair, is not that surprising because Cleveland was more of a running and they were more of a ball control team, utilizing their defense to kind of go and get the other team out of their game. But CJ Stroud said, no way. And he gets his gift for that is to go to Baltimore on Saturday afternoon and try to beat the presumptive MVP Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens, the number one seed in the AFC. The second game was a Kansas City Miami game. I mean, there really wasn't much of anything there. It was cold as hell. Taylor Swift was wearing a Kristen Juszczyk jacket. Kermit the Frog did whatever he had to do. Isaiah Pacheco looked like a freaking Mack truck the whole night, and Miami didn't put up a fight. The term finesse team really fits what that game was in a nutshell for Miami. They really couldn't handle the defensive pressure from the Kansas City defense. That's the better side of the ball, and it's weird to say when you're talking about Kermit the Frog and Kelsey and all that, but Rashee Rice, their only wide receiver of value, made a few big plays there too. So they did what they had to do, and there was a chance that they were going to continue to stay at home if the games had went a certain way. But I mean, I don't think it was that surprising. I think of all the matchups that were there, I think the most likely scenario was, oh man, come on. Most likely scenario took place there when it comes to, oh no, that's not good. And you got to walk it out. But Kermit in Kansas City gets the victory. I mean, Tua didn't really have much of anything the whole night. Tyreek Hill made the one big play for a touchdown, but it just didn't. The running game was never really able to get established, and you have all those guys, former 49ers like Mostert, who scored so many touchdowns this year, Jeff Wilson Jr. Achane really just wasn't his usual self. It just seemed like Miami was a step behind the whole night, both on offense and defense. Vic Fangio's defensive play calls were not really good or the right ones at the time, necessary times. So unfortunate for Mike McDaniel and Miami, but they go home to defrost, and the Kansas City Chiefs continue. I mean, that game, we talked about it last week. I don't think it was all that surprising, but I will say this though: the Rashee Rice being existing there is key. I don't know about you, but oh man, another try to pick, second time he's done that. Cunningham almost picked that ball off, but I think Rashee Rice is going to be huge here for the Chiefs. Whatever, for as long as they are around in this playoff, if he isn't open, Mahomes doesn't have anybody else on the wide receiver side to throw to. And Kelsey, for whatever reason, has regressed this year. I mean, yeah, he's an All-Pro because of his name, but he wasn't an All-Pro for a good part of the end part of the season there, and they need him because they need Rashee Rice because that's one of the only ways they're going to keep Travis Kelsey open or give him the opportunities to be open. But what else did you see or was in terms of that game, Josh?
Yeah, you make that observation about Rice, and yeah, he definitely after kind of most of the season where he didn't have a lot of good play, had a lot of drops and stuff throughout the year. One of the problems with the Chiefs this year, but he was able to convert a lot of those throws that Patrick Mahomes was throwing to him, and really the only wide receiver that they had that was consistently making plays. You saw there was a play where Mahomes, I think he was MVS down the middle that split the defense and had a chance, but he gave up. And I think it ended up being a penalty, but he gave up on a deep ball that was just right in front of him that I think probably would have stood if he had laid out for the catch. But Rice had a good game. I think one thing you have to say about Mahomes is, they didn't really have a lot of, I think because of their wide receiver situation, they didn't really have a lot of, big plays deep, down the field that they're known for. But on the other hand, Mahomes went out and got, the easy plays that he needed to make, and he's able to, kind of sit down and dissect the defense, kind of Brady-esque. So if he kind of continues that play style, we could very well see the Chiefs back to the Super Bowl once again. If he is able to continue playing like that, and of course Isaiah Pacheco definitely running hard. Nobody wanted to tackle him in that game, especially in those conditions. So credit to him for being able to do that. And of course, their defense played extremely well as with Chris Jones, L'Jarius Sneed at corner playing extremely well and completely bodied Tyreek Hill on one play, just completely took him out of the play before, I think it was before half, and Tua couldn't go anywhere and he ended up getting sacked. So that was a good play by their defense. And then of course Tua Tagovailoa, a lot of questions about him, I think, after this game, especially if, he's able to create anything out of structure. It seems like he really relies on, the playbook, kind of playing itself out and being able to take the shots that he's able to down the field. And, with Tyreek kind of banged up, makes it a little bit more difficult. Of course, their offensive line had struggles as well with a lot of their players injured. So that affected him. But, in those conditions, cold weather, negative 23 wind chill, fourth coldest game in NFL history, got to be able to deliver. And just his arm strength compared to Mahomes just doesn't compare. So you have that. And then, of course, discourse of Tua, after the game online. I know one account that I saw had said that, they should try to get Kirk Cousins in the offseason, photoshopping a quickly, Microsoft Paint version of Kirk Cousins in a Miami Dolphins uniform. So that could be an interesting development if they go for it, of course. And I think one play that does describe his arm strength in these conditions is that play action pass that he had to Tyreek Hill that went for a touchdown. You saw it was second one, which is a good situation for a shot play for a potential touchdown play action pass. And he threw it down the field, but it was short of Tyreek, and he had to stop and come back for it. And then that caused the defender on the Chiefs to go and commit pass interference there. So definitely kind of shows the difference between Tua and maybe what Mahomes would look like in that scenario. So that's going to be something that they think about, even though it ended up being a touchdown. Just made it a lot more difficult for Tyreek. Wasn't in stride like I think if Mahomes were in that situation probably would. So that's definitely something to think there. And I think also McDaniel, for as good as everybody wanted to praise him this season for how he played or coached, I think one thing that he's got to be able to do is evolve his playbook and beyond what they were able to do. I think teams figured them out, and the plays that work, against lesser teams that work in September, you got to make adjustments over the season. I think that was something that doomed them, is that they didn't make enough adjustments to the playbook to cause more confusion and disruption, like we saw at the beginning of the year. So we'll see what they decide to do here in the off season, but I think they're looking to get some of their players back from injury, and also looking to see where they can get better.
Yeah, and there's always room for improvement. 2 years oh yeah, he got that catch though, and he still held on. 2 years as a head coach and 2 playoff appearances for Mike McDaniel in Miami for a long time. Miami hadn't been in the playoffs, or it had been pretty rare. So in that sense, it's good. Now, would they need to progress and actually make some changes, maybe personnel-wise, or make the point that you bring, Josh, in terms of evolving the playbook is necessary because it's the playoffs. Everybody's going to know everything you're doing, so you have to be able to change it up and on the fly even. So unfortunately for Miami, they weren't able to do it. Cold got to them too, so it is where they are what they are. Oh, that's Julio Jones. Jesus, I forgot he was on the Eagles. Yeah, so that was the second game, and then of course the reason why we named this show what we did was the Dallas Green Bay game. I was preoccupied for a good amount of the day with my bowling and practice, but I was in my car driving to practice and saw 27-0, and I'm like, is that a misprint? And actually it wasn't, because old Dakota, Mr. Sleep Number Bed, was put to sleep because of pick six and another interception that ended up leading to a touchdown. Necklace Mike McCarthy doing what he always does, which is fall short in the playoffs. Oh, that's oh man, that's what they needed. That's a huge play there. Green Bay just dominated them in every aspect, really. Even though Green Bay's defense is not really good under most metrics, they were able to lock down Dallas for a good amount of the game. Once it was out of reach, of course, they were able to score when it didn't count for anything. Prescott threw for over 400 yards, but in the end, most of those yards were, and that's a touchdown for the Eagles. So now Tampa Bay has to pick it up, because they had been kicking field goals here last couple of possessions. They need to really pick this stuff up. Green Bay, Jordan Love in his playoff debut looked like he had been playing 10 years in this league. They're on a heater these last few weeks. The same thing, Miami was on the downswing. They'd been losing a bunch of games. You look at, and then you look at Cleveland. They were on a heater sort of, but they didn't finish, and he jumped. And then in the Dallas game, they were able to do what they had to do to win the division and get the number 2 seed, which in a lot of people were thinking they were going to go and advance to the NFC Championship game and be able to play against the San Francisco 49ers. But you have to win the first game, and they didn't even put up a fight. And that was pretty embarrassing. They haven't made a decision in terms of if they're going to keep Mike McCarthy, but I think it's pretty safe to say that he's going to be sent by Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones, no matter what, they can say whatever they want to say, but the reality is he's part of the problem. And just like other owners that have too much power and have too much say, did they stop it? They stopped it. They stopped the tush push on the 2-pointer. Oh, that's something. Okay. All right.
Wow. The first documented in history, probably.
Yeah.
This is amazing. Finally.
Yeah. Somebody freaking stopped the tush push after the encroachment, or no, after the false start. And yeah, he didn't even get close. Delay on the jump. Or no, he got stuffed to the point he never got a chance to jump. Great job by the Tampa Bay defense. There. So keeps it a one possession game, 16-9. Hopefully Tampa Bay can actually make something happen this possession. But I mean, there's a lot to take away. I mean, Ferguson had 3 scores, but Dallas's defense, freaking Micah Parsons, who talked lots of shit for a lot of the season, but I didn't see Homeboy yesterday, and I haven't really seen Homeboy do much of anything last few weeks for a guy who talks a lot. And Dak Prescott, who gets paid, $40 million a year, and they're talking about possibly giving him an extension to pay him $60 million a year. And for what? I mean, because they can't get anybody else? I mean, I guess you talked about the Kirk Cousins thing. I mean, it depends on who the coach is, and there's rumors about it being Bill Belichick, but is Dak Prescott capable of making it happen? Do they have the pieces in place to really be a contender? Their secondary, injuries wise, it started to make a difference. Deron Bland is an interception or nothing cornerback. Stephon Gilmore's on the back end of his career. They didn't really have an identity running wise, even though Tony Pollard was capable. And Mike McCarthy started getting away from the run game, which ironically was part of the thing he said when Kellen Moore resigned, that they were passing the ball too much, so we were going to go and run the ball more. Well, when you're down 27-0, you're not going to be running the ball, but I just find it hilarious. The Kyle Brandt did his usual deal on GMFB talking about the Cowboys, because that's just what the Cowboys have been since 1996. They may make the playoffs, but they always fall short. They're all talk because they're the biggest franchise in American sports, but in the grand scheme of things, the amount of playoff games that they've won, the fact they haven't even made the NFC Championship game since the 1995 season is pretty god awful. And Jerry Jones is a big reason why, because he was the idiot that decided to fire Jimmy Johnson, and they said, putting Jimmy Johnson into the the Ring of Honor was going to break that curse. Well, guess that curse is still around. I mean, this weekend's been interesting in terms of the teams being sent, but Dallas also losing. I thought they could have had a run in them, and I mean that's about as bad of a performance as you could put up there. There's no fight, no energy, no nothing. I mean, it's basically Mike McCarthy in a nutshell, because he's like a jellyfish too, just like Wade Phillips, but and he's necklace like Peter Griffin and that Fanta guy who announces bowling for Fox. But what other did you see? I mean, I'll just throw it to you, Josh. I mean, Dak Prescott, man, I don't get what the thing is. I guess they're a great fan. They're good for fantasy purposes. And he had a year that theoretically he was an MVP candidate. But MVPs make big play. Oh man, that was a huge catch. But Prescott, yet again in the playoffs, when he needed to make a big play, he went the other way.
Yeah, I mean, for Dak, I mean, it was just bad all around, right? I mean, it's just a classic choke by the Cowboys in the playoffs. And, it's interesting that they go up against the Packers and Jordan Love looking like kind of a cross between Brett Favre and Rodgers. They have that same kind of throw. I mean, Rodgers, I think, has a very quick release, but just the way that he kind of goes, Jordan Love goes out there and throws the ball, like how his feet move around in the pocket and how he steps into his throw. Just it looks like off platform, and somehow he makes it work. But they just really ran the ball really well, and especially in the second half there. But Dak was really off throughout the first half of that game, and of course through the pick six, which obviously we have seen Dallas do that, but now it's happened to them now, and especially in their house. But yeah, just completely off for most of the first half. And interesting that the score ended up being 27-7 for the second consecutive year in a wild card game, of course. But of course, the Green Bay Packers were able to run the ball in the second half and kind of put them away early on. And obviously, the Cowboys kind of clawed back into it as far as score goes, but it's just been a lot of effort to be able to try to go for down 2 scores, try to go for a touchdown, and then get a onside kick there that was probably more than likely never going to happen. But yeah, just a interesting deal as that whole thing went out. And of course, with Mike McCarthy possibly on the hot seat, of course, there's been a lot of talk throughout the league about Bill Belichick, who has a good relationship with the Jones family there in Dallas, if he would possibly go down there and coach for the Cowboys for a few short years, probably into retirement. So we'll see how that plays out. Of course, yeah, Mike McCarthy. I mean, it's hard to fire a guy off a 12 win season, right? And having consecutive playoff appearances and 3 consecutive years making the playoffs. But it's just the way that it's happened. They haven't gotten further than the divisional round ever, and just knowing that, oh well, if you think that this coach can do more than 12 wins, can you keep him? Or if you think you can get a guy who can get the same output and more. So it's interesting to see how it will play out. But just entertaining. I think every fan in the NFL that's not a Cowboys fan wants to see the Cowboys lose, no matter what, because they're always overhyped. They get like almost all the primetime games ever in the league. In a lot of years they get primetime games when they don't deserve it. So it's just entertaining to see them lose in that style, of course. And then on the other end, the Packers, no one thought that they'd be there. So, honestly, it's hard to see a 7 seed go out and win against a 2 seed, and they went out and did it. So, obviously they're going to go play the 49ers here, and kind of another rematch in the 49ers and the Packers that they've had in the playoffs over the last few years. But it'll be interesting to see how Jordan Love goes up against that 49ers defense. But yeah, just a good game overall for them, and going out and kind of proving that they're a real team here in this playoffs.
Yeah, and I mean, he was able to spread the ball around to getting it to Wicks for the 1 score. He was able get it to Musgrove on or Musgrave, whatever the hell, on 1 touchdown. And I mean, it just seemed like Jordan Love was throwing darts the whole day. He didn't really have a lot of resistance, and that's when you're able to just basically dictate from behind the line there. I mean, that's you gotta go and give credit to him on that. Aaron Jones looked like his old self, going out there and controlling the ball with the run. Why am I for Romeo Dubs? That's the other one. He's another one that made plays. He just got sacked. Oh man, yeah. Then yeah, so Philly gets another stop. So now all of a sudden, so Philly has a chance now with 1:42 to go to tie the game here going into halftime. But Green Bay and Matt LaFleur, they were prepared all around to put them away, and they did. It was in the first half, and Jordan Love now has that test next Saturday night against the San Francisco 49ers, who come off their week off as the number 1 seed. And Fletcher Cox should have gotten a penalty there, but they didn't bother to. And so we'll see what happens with that. We'll talk about that later. The Detroit-LA game was the one game, I think, this whole weekend that was compelling so far. I mean, this game is close. Oh, he muffed the damn punt, or whoever the hell that is, muffed the punt and got away with it. And but for Detroit, for Jared Goff, the former number 1 overall pick for the LA Rams, going against Matthew Stafford, who was a former number 1 overall pick for Detroit, spent many years, a good amount of his career in Detroit. They got traded for each other. He goes and promptly wins a Super Bowl. Goff was a throw-in essentially in that trade, and in this night, in that situation, in the first time in 30 years for Detroit to have a home playoff game, the fans showed up, and Jared Goff showed up, played one of the best games of his career. Detroit seemed to have an ability to do whatever they wanted on offense as well, because the LA defense has been kind of mediocre at best this year. They do have the defensive line, they do have Aaron Donald, but they have the rookie guy and stuff, but they haven't had a lot behind that. They weren't really able to have an answer for Amon-Ra St. Brown. They didn't really have an answer for the running game. Detroit, on the other side, of course, their defense isn't exactly the greatest either, but they have Aiden Hutchinson, who is a dynamic pass rusher, and they were able to make enough stops, force field goals instead of touchdowns, and Detroit gets the victory 24-23. They're able to hold off the LA Rams. I thought the Rams, they've had momentum here. I thought that they were going to go and it was going to be another matchup against the 49ers, but instead they go and lose that game, and they get to go home as well. Motor City Dan Campbell takes them, first coach since Wayne Fonts to win a playoff game for the Detroit Lions, and they get to host another playoff game Sunday afternoon against whoever wins this game between Tampa and Philly. So we'll see what happens with that. The Buffalo game was against Pittsburgh. It got moved to Monday because of a blizzard. Or whatever, big snowstorm. They almost got him there. Then in the end, Baltimore was up 21-0 early. Josh Allen essentially, I don't know why he isn't being considered for MVP. Maybe because he turned the ball over a lot or whatever. They had that off period, but honestly, if we're going to talk about most valuable players, Josh Allen is one of the most valuable players in the league, because if Buffalo doesn't have him, they probably win 3 or 4 games. So he did his job out there. Buffalo suffered a couple of big injuries during the game, and so with Terrell Bernard and I think a corner, so that is something to look at going into next week. But they end up holding off Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh did make a run. Mason Rudolph's able to get a couple of scores. They blocked a field goal, and they were able to get momentum. But in the end, Shakir takes a swing pass from Josh Allen. Almost gets tackled, gets back up, and runs it into the end zone. And that was really the turning point of the game. And Buffalo now get to go and play Kearney at home instead of being on the road, which for whatever reason between the playoffs, it's because of seeding, but in the regular season, for whatever reason, they insist on sending Buffalo always to Kansas City. In this case, for the first time in his career, Patrick Mahomes will go on the road for a playoff game. So I think that's as intriguing as anything. We'll talk about it later, but Buffalo did what they had to do today. The fan base, of course, coming out to go and plow out Highmark Stadium. And, I mean, they were able to they kind of controlled it for most of the night. Yeah, there was a time there for Pittsburgh. They started to get a little momentum, but Josh Allen is just, I mean, he's unstoppable when he decides he wants to be. And that's really all there is to it. I mean, we really have to go and look at, I guess the greater conversation about that game that they're going to have next week, but Pittsburgh put up a fight. Omar Epps, I just read on NFL.com, walked out of the press conference when they asked him about his future. So I guess he's a little bit edgy about that. Even though he's had a winning season every year of his coaching career, Super Bowl winning head coach, only the third head coach they've had in about 50-something year span or whatever the hell it is with Pittsburgh. That's why Pittsburgh is a winning organization. But they do have a quarterback situation that they're going to end up having a competition in training camp if they don't bother to improve the quarterback position itself. So, I mean, we'll see what happens with Pittsburgh there. But Josh Allen, that's period, end of story, right, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I think Josh Allen here is the story of obviously made the plays throughout this game to win. Of course, going up 21-0 early in the game helps. And of course, that 52-yard run for a touchdown, unfathomable to see, especially with how the tackling that was attempted was very poor. And I guess defense on the Steelers just didn't know what to do with the quarterback going out on a scramble for a 52-yard touchdown. That's just honestly, I mean, even if you're not a Steelers fan or anything, it's just like, yeah, that's just bad football there. And the tackling there, I mean, I think a lot of the reasons why we see, bad tackling now here in the NFL throughout is just because of the rules and, how they make the rules to protect the offense and favor the offense really with, where they're allowed to make hits and stuff. And especially with the quarterback, it's hard to go out and lay out a quarterback going on a scramble because you're in fear of a penalty. So, you try some other way and it doesn't really work, and that's what happened there. So and him breaking all those tackles and everything. So for the Bills, I mean, they took care of business. I don't really think anybody could have really pictured a Steelers upset win. They made it kind of interesting later on in the game into the fourth quarter. But the Bills, they were just I think too much for Steelers there. So I mean, I think this one's probably the least surprising one there to see happen. But yeah, now Buffalo gets to host the Kansas City Chiefs, so we're going to see what the Chiefs-Bills rivalry, I guess, that this is kind of turning into, looks like at home, and for them, and we'll see how they do next week. But and especially with the weather as it is right now, so that should be a good game. But I think for the Steelers, of course, quarterback controversy, they're going to have to figure out something there because I don't think either Kenny Pickett or Mason Rudolph obviously are the future for that franchise. And then Mike Tomlin possibly leaving. I mean, I think you got to continue for a few years at least. He's not as young as what he used to be, but he's been they haven't won in the playoffs in a long time, but it's hard to argue for a coach that, puts you in a position, argue against a coach that puts you in a position to make the playoffs every year. There's, really, have not had a losing season. And even in the years where, they ended up maybe not making the playoffs, they were still in contention, or their team, always fights hard to the bitter end. So Steelers, they will have to answer those questions here in the offseason. And of course, some of their players, George Pickens and others, need to play better with more effort. But they overall, especially defense and running attack, they figure out how to get it done.
Yeah, and that's something that we'll definitely see Pittsburgh. If they were to move on from Mike Tomlin, it would be unprecedented considering the history of this franchise. Both Chuck Noll and Bill Cowher retired, and that was why the changes took place. Otherwise, they have not made a coaching change based on performance since, I don't know, probably the freaking 60s. I mean, so that's unbelievable. But they do have a quarterback problem. They've had a quarterback problem since Ben Roethlisberger retired. So it's something that is going to have to be addressed, whether it's in the draft or in free agency, for sure. And yeah, the Buffalo game against Kansas City, which will be on Sunday evening, will be the box office game of the week. The one that Tony Romo, it's like Tony Romo's like fantasy bowl, because he whacks it to both Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen anyway. So, and Jim Nantz can't get enough of it. He's another one. So that's what'll be for that game. The one game, obviously, as I said, is to be determined. The other team or the other half of the Detroit matchup will be determined later on tonight. Whoever wins between Tampa and Philly. Philly, for whatever inexplicable reason, they were trying to arrange or get a field goal here late to get it within 4 points. Threw a ball inside with no timeouts to Gainwell, gets tackled, and runs out the clock. I'll say Devontae Smith is playing at a level which is why he won the Heisman Trophy. I mean, he seems to be getting open with regularity and making plays. But outside of Devontae Smith, there's little bits from Goddard, but Jalen Hurts, the hand is affecting him a little bit. He doesn't seem to be as good as he had been. The defense is playing all right because they've kind of locked down on Baker Mayfield. So we'll see what happens in general with the second half coming. Going through the coaching situation here, we have, 7 coaching vacancies. 8, it was 8, but the New England Patriots had a succession plan where Gerard Mayo would become the head coach once Bill Belichick ended up either moved on from him. Well, that's great. And you talk about that. So, wow, it would have actually been pretty close if it was just between those two. But, you look at the other jobs here. The only things that have been decided are the New England Patriots head coach and Washington hiring 49ers assistant GM Adam Peters to become their new general manager. So, and also Gerard Mayo becomes the youngest head coach in the NFL at 37 years of age. So that's the news. And Jim Harbaugh won the national championship last week, and now it looks like he is probably coming to the NFL again or coming back to the NFL. It's just a matter of where. Interviewing for a few jobs. You got Antonio Pierce interviewing for a few jobs. I think the Raiders are more than likely going to bring him back. That seems like the logical scenario, but you have to wonder what they're going to do there, and if he doesn't get it, if he would get another opportunity elsewhere, like Atlanta. Carolina is still looking. They have unlimited funds and a shitty owner who's a billionaire. Chicago got rid of a bunch of their coaches, so Eberflus, the performance of the team late in the season saved him, and they have the number 1 and 10 overall picks going into the draft this April, but the offense is going to change around a lot because of all the coaches that were let go. We talked about Jacksonville in detail. Josh passionately let us know what's going on. I do agree that they didn't really get rid of the problem or problems by getting rid of Caldwell or Bernie Parmalee, but we'll see what happens with that. The Raiders, I mentioned with Antonio Pierce, they also need to get a general manager. Same for the Chargers. And then the Giants, it doesn't say that they've moved on from Wink Martindale, but I think that's basically
I think they
done.
did.
Well, the only reason I'm saying that is because it's not on the NFL coaching tracker, but I felt like they did, so I don't know. That's a misprint there, maybe.
Yeah, I thought he resigned.
Yeah, Yeah, he did actually. So yeah, my bad. Yeah, Pittsburgh, they replaced Canada, so we'll see if that continues. Of course, if Omar Epps continues as the coach. Tennessee, Mike Vrabel gets canned. He's probably someone who's gonna get us another option, another opportunity, being a winning head coach and having 6 years in the league and taking the Titans to the playoffs 3 times, along with one AFC Championship game. Washington, I mentioned, with Adam Peters, so they're going to be cleaning house on the coaching side with and looking for somebody new. I think they were talking about Detroit's Ben Johnson. They were also looking at, there's a couple other guys, a couple other assistants that seem to be standing out to them, but Washington will be one. Washington, Carolina, because of the amount of money the owners have, probably are curious. Chargers, if Jim Harbaugh goes there, what will the Spanoses do? Because they've had quite a checkered history, especially with management and coaching. And also the Raiders, too, to be fair, because of Mark Davis. But, that's why, parting ways. There you go. That's why it's over there. And then Seattle, also with Pete Carroll being, he didn't want to quit, but the Allens decided that they wanted to move on from him. So we'll see what happens there. Atlanta looks like right now have interviewed 8 different coaches. Carolina has gone through a very in-depth and thorough search, not only on the head coach side, but the GM side. Raiders, not as much. They've done a little bit with the GM search. Chargers have, and then bunch of requests. Oh my God. Greg Roman. I'd feel bad for Justin Fields if he ends up with Greg Roman as his offensive coordinator. So that's that. I mean, before we move forward on anything, Josh, I guess I have to ask you, with Jacksonville, what have you heard in regards to the coaches? Any news or rumors on your end in terms of what's going on, and any other things that have been coming out in the aftermath of what took place at the end of the season for the Jaguars?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard some stuff. They've had a couple of teams that they wanted to interview their defensive coordinators. They wanted to interview the defensive coordinator from the Panthers and the Falcons, and both of them got blocked. But I think that's because they're both in line to get interviews as head coaches. That's kind of interesting there after a year ago, where I think, Press Taylor was getting wanted to get interviews, or people wanted to interview Press Taylor, and the Jaguars blocked it. So interesting there to see that. But they have interviewed, or at least attempted to interview a lot of other coaches. They were interviewing Chris Harris, the passing game defensive coordinator for the Titans. They talked to Marquand Manuel, the safety coach of the New York Jets, who also interviewed for the Jaguars all the way back in 2016. They are interviewing the Baltimore passing game defensive coordinator and secondaries coach, Chris Hewitt. Let's see, Shane Bowen there as well, former defensive coordinator for the Titans. Wink Martindale scheduled the interview on Tuesday and Wednesday, which a lot of people are interested, I guess, in his defensive scheme there. Anthony Weaver, defensive line on the Baltimore Ravens. This is interesting to see. I mean, obviously, most of the defensive staff on the Jags getting laid off here. And obviously, I think we all know that was kind of a scapegoat, but at the same time, the defense did play poorly in the second half of the season after the Monday night game onwards. They just, whatever reason, went the same. But, that's that's what I've heard so far on that front. Of course, nothing on the GM or anything else that we want to see gone. So we'll see how that plays out. And everything, but yeah, haven't heard much. Just rumors and stuff. Looks like heard some stuff about Trevor Lawrence and potentially talking to the owner and their post conversation, and sounds like he's with the fans. He doesn't like. He's not too fond of press and doesn't really agree with the direction of team building that Balky has implemented in place so far. So we'll see what ends up happening there. Jalen Hurts getting sacked here to end the drive there, but we'll see how that plays out. And reportedly, Doug Peterson and Shad Khan had their interview conversations and stuff. So interesting to see how that after what we talked about last week, how all that plays out. But at least on the defensive coaches front, from I think what the Jacksonville media has talked about, who they thought would be reporters thought they would be a good candidates. They're looking in the right direction in that area. I'll say that at least.
And I think the bigger deal, of course, you mentioned it, is if Shad Khan and the Khan family decide to move on from Trent Baalke, because that would put Doug Peterson on deck, honestly, as a likely, or as somebody who would definitely be on the hot seat, and has had a history of not being able to get along with front office, because part of why he got ran out of Philly. I mean, not just because I'm forgetting the personnel guy, GM, whatever. He's butt buddies with Jeffrey Lurie. Yeah. So I mean,
Howie Roseman.
Yeah, Howie Roseman. With Jeffrey Lurie. So he's basically his ball licker, the same way as Brian Cashman is for Hal Steinbrenner. So that's the problem there. But I mean, we're gonna see what happens with that with Doug Peterson, and if he will stick around. I mean, definitely a lot of pressure thinking about you have franchise level players on both sides of the ball. Now, did Trevor Lawrence play like a franchise quarterback at times this season? No, but there were other flashes of why he was the number one overall pick. Josh Allen is a franchise defensive player, and you need to build around him. And if they're not going to, I'm sure there's 31 other teams that would love to have his services because of how dynamic of a player he is. So something to look at here as we move forward. Chili Bowl took place. We'll do a little bit of motorsports, obviously, because we are a motorsports show. The 2024 Chili Bowl was a lot like the 2023 Chili Bowl in that the guy who came out on top in the A main after 55 laps was Logan Seavey for Kevin Swindell Racing. Goes and holds off pole sitter Buddy Kofoid. And Kofoid, that's basically one of the only things he hasn't won in his young career. Unfortunately, yet another year he'll have to wait to get that golden driller. Logan Seavey gets the win over Buddy Kofoid. Corey Day rounds out the podium. Dason Pursley from the D main gets to fourth overall, or finishes fourth. Also had serious injuries and had to come back from that too. Hank Davis was fifth. Shane Golobic, Tanner Carrick, Spencer Baston, Michael Facinto, and Jake Swanson for Alex Bowman Racing rounds out the top 10. Carter Sarf finished 18th, and Chase Briscoe made the A main, finished 21st at a DNF. So he had two cars, though, from himself and Sarf make the A main, which is huge considering how some of these big organizations that made it that had most of the cars. So credit to Briscoe and that team to go and get two cars into the A main when you consider 365 cars were in this event. In terms of the Dakar Rally, it's they're they're in the second week. Right now the general ranking, the general classification in motorcycles, America's Ricky Brabeck trying to go for his second win in the Dakar Rally as a 42-second lead over Ross Branch, and his teammates Nacho Cornejo is third, and Adrian Van Beveren is fourth. Defending race winner Kevin Benavides is fifth. Toby Price, Daniel Sanders, world champion Luciano Benavides, Kevin's brother, Zvitko, Martin Micek round out the top 10. So Brabeck still has, how many stages? So 9 stages. So stage 10. Yeah. So there's still 4 stages to go in this race to see who will be the champions in their respective classes. Yeah, it's rally in rally. What is it in rally 2? I'm gonna look for Romain Dumontier, 2 French riders, Jean-Luc Lepin, and then Indian Harith Noah is right now 8:53 behind in third place. So opportunity for an Indian rider to, that's going to be 15 more yards. He didn't slide though, but they're going to call that as a personal foul. Noah has a chance to go and win Indian rider. I would assume that's the first time if an Indian rider has ever won in the Dakar. In the quads class, Manuel Andujar leads Alexander Giroux and Gerard Barga. So that battle, it's only Andujar and Giroux is 11:26 behind there. So that's in the quad category. So in the original, any of that, who cares? In the cars category, in the 4x2 class, Layla Sands still is in third. She's only less than 6 minutes out of second, but they're nearly 2 hours out of the lead there. So Sarah Dory still leads that class. In the ultimate car category, Carlos Sainz is in prototype category. Carlos Sainz leads the race by 24 seconds on Sebastian Loeb, so it sounds like an old World Rally Championship event. Lucas Moraes is third, Dean Mevius fourth, Janelle de Villiers fifth. So trying to see who else is out there. Nobody else that really kind of stands out. Okay. The challenger category, Mitchell Guthrie and Kellen Walk, the American duo, lead by 34 minutes on Christina Gutierrez, and Austin Jones is fifth. He has a chance to move up to fourth, so that could be two Americans in the top 5 in that class. And then in SSV, Sarah Price is 12 minutes 32 behind in third place, so still has a chance to possibly get the victory. If nothing else, could possibly move up one step on the podium there. So another American, and of course her boyfriend leading the bikes category. So it could be a pretty big week here if they can finish things out. The trucks category, the futures. Trying to see that. Jamie Campbell is in fifth in the classics category. So that's the Dakar. The race has still got another 4 days to go, and we'll talk about it next week on who ends up where in that. In Super Motocross got I'm trying to go look it up here. Super Motocross Championship, round 2 in San Francisco. Chase Sexton gets his first victory for KTM in the 450 category. All right, go to that. Yeah, Jordan Smith gets the victory in 250s. All right. The points heading to Anaheim 2. Chase Sexton leads the points by 8 over Jet Lawrence, who had a pretty rough ride in the mud there. And Eli Tomac and Aaron Plessinger tied for third. Dylan Ferrandis rounds out the top 5. I mean, basically from Jet Lawrence all the way to Ken Roczen's only separated by 6 points. In the 250 class, Jordan Smith leads Levi Kitchen by 5 points. RJ Hampshire, Garrett Marchbanks, Carson Mumford round out the top 5 there. And Formula E, Pascal Wehrlein gets the victory in the season opener for Porsche. And Pascal Wehrlein wins pole and gets the race win. And over Sebastian Buemi and Nick Cassidy, who had the fastest lap in the race in his debut for Jaguar. Maxi Gunther, Mitch Evans round out the top 5. Jean-Eric Verne, Jake Hughes, Stoffel Van Dorn, world champion Jake Dennis, and his teammate Norman Nato round out the top 10. J.N. Daruvula in his debut in Formula E finished 16th for Maserati. Nick DeVries returning to Formula E for Mahindra finished 15th. Eduardo Matara's teammate finished 13th, so struggles there. In terms of DNFs, Luca de Grassi, Sergio Sette Camara, Robin Frines, and Antonio Felix da Costa. So they had polar opposites. You had the winner and then the guy who fell out of the race first. So we'll see what happens with Formula E as they move to Saudi Arabia for 2 races in a couple weeks' time before they take a break of about 6 weeks before they race in Sao Paulo. And the SRX, I mean, Josh, we'll talk about this here. I mean, the SRX series, we talked about it here, and it was entertaining. It had a place, obviously, in the summer. Tony Stewart and Montag Group and having ESPN, CBS, and then ESPN come in to cover it. But in the end, it looks like funding wasn't there to keep it going. Can make an argument that Paul Tracy wrecking every single one of their cars didn't help. But I guess, unfortunately, it was a good concept, but I think when they started it and they weren't able to sustain it, probably because you're not able to get all the biggest drivers, even with it going to a Thursday Night Thunder or Wednesday Night Thunder, they weren't able to get the kind of drivers that they needed. Being a stock car kind of category, they weren't going to get that many open wheeler people to come in. But IROC's coming back. We don't really have much more news other than Evernham and Kaufman are part of this thing. Evernham used to work for IROC for Jay Signori. He collects a bunch of IROC cars. So it's entirely possible they could bring those things out of mothballs and update them and kind of bring them back out for classic purposes. As Tampa's trying to drive here with under 6 minutes to go in the third quarter. But what were your thoughts? I mean, I guess what were your thoughts on SRX and as it probably goes away?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of shocking, and I think the IROC news was announced first, and when I heard that, I was like, well, that's kind of weird, because IROC, I mean, is basically, it's going to be, that sounds like the same thing as SRX, which is just IROC on using kind of road course or Trans Am cars as a base type, spec cars on short tracks. And it's kind of the same idea. Ray Evernham was one of the spearheads of that with Tony Stewart, and now making the actual IROC name come back. That's definitely a different direction. And so, have two series kind of being kind of the same type. It didn't really make a lot of sense. And then the next, I think, later on, the SRX announcing that they're going to be suspending the season, and probably that's it for that series. And it's unfortunate because yeah, we saw a lot of great action through that series and over the course of its couple of seasons. But I think, Dan Baker just took a big sack there on third down. But I think even after the second season, you could kind of start to see the limitations of this series and what it was able to do. Obviously, we've seen what they were able to do in 2022, and it's given rise to some big names like that are on the up and coming, like Ernie Francis Jr. Old guys getting another shot, like Tony Kanaan, Elio Castroneves, Marco Andretti getting a title in this series, even though he didn't win a race. Other guys getting back into it, like Michael Waltrip, Bobby Labonte, and others. So disappointing to see, but I think when it's kind of the same concept over the last couple of years, they didn't really go away from. I mean, I think what they had worked, but they didn't put in any variety there to try to make it more interesting, like maybe going on a road course or something, like a small road course like Lime Rock Park or something like that. But it would have been interesting if they would have do that with these the cars that they were using. But I think it just wasn't sustainable in the end. And like you said, it's hard to get the drivers to come out, especially when they got to finalize things way far out before things get too complicated. And it's hard to commit, hard to get drivers to come in. And then also you factor in the stock car guys kind of dominating, just kind of like in the old IROC, where it ended up being just dominated by a lot of stock car guys. You kind of see the same thing here. I mean, you had your open wheel guys that had heavy oval experience, like Elio and Tony Kanaan, kind of have success. Marco Andretti as well, but at the end of the day, it was especially I think this past season just ended up being a lot of the stock car drivers, whether they're in NASCAR or the local favorite, come out and perform in a better than the guys that are not used to driving this type of car on an oval track. So unfortunate, but I think also just kind of how it's probably going to end up. And I think also Tony Stewart, we've already talked about him with his commitment to drag racing and everything, and then he has the SRX, and you don't know if there's going to be a conflict with SRX and drag racing potentially, especially if he's going to be doing it full time. So it's hard to keep going, and you got too many things on your plate. So you kind of seeing Tony Stewart sort of consolidate here, giving up the All-Star Circuit of Champions to Kyle Larson, now this, and focusing on drag racing. And of course, maybe SHR is on the way too, because they have no sponsorship outside of maybe one guy. So we'll see if that happens. But I think just the IROC coming back, that could be interesting. And I don't know if they'll go back to the old cars. I think those cars are well out of date, and it would take a lot of work to bring them up to safety spec and everything. But if they go on to some of the big tracks like what we used to see back in the old days, maybe it could be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's something to look at if they go and bring it back for go and race at Daytona and Talladega or maybe Darlington. I mean, who knows really at this point. I mean, Tony won the first year in SRX over Ernie Francis Jr. Second year was Marco over I think Tony, or not Tony, I don't know, I forget who it was. And then in last year, No Neck Ryan Newman ended up getting the championship. So a couple guys, buddies of Tony, getting the wins. The point Josh made about Tony with the NHRA, I think, also plays a part. Notion of having a lot of things going on. Tony's getting rid of a lot of things. Also, Josh brought up the sprint cars, the All-Star Circuit of Champions. Oh, is that a safety? Yes, it is. That's a safety. He didn't get rid of the ball. He was down before he got rid of the ball. It's a safety.
Ciarani's definitely getting fired now.
Yeah, and I don't know where the flag. Because he threw. Oh yeah, an elite intentional grounding too. Yeah, so um, that is a huge play by Levante David. I mean, you have to have better awareness of where you are on the field. You need to step up in that spot, and then he's running around like a dope. Or not Levante David. I don't know who that was, who made that play, but the coverage was really, really good. Finally, for the first time in a while, there was nothing there, and yeah. So, yep. Is that trying to think who the hell is number 98 for
Nelson.
Nelson? Okay, yeah, good job by him. Gets Jalen Hurts, and now they have a 9-point lead, and they'll also get the free kick from Philadelphia. So now it's a job to see if they can go and sustain a possession, knock some time off the clock as well. As I was saying in regards to Tony and what he's got going on, Josh mentioned it with getting rid of the All-Star Circuit of Champions to Larson and Brad Sweet. He also, this is now going away. He's him and Leah Pruitt are trying to start a family. He's taking over Leah's ride in the top fuel category after racing in the top alcohol dragster class last year. So there's that. Of course, bringing up the Stewart Haas Racing as of now, in outside of Chase Briscoe, who has funding for the full season, mostly from Mahindra and High Point and Ford Performance Racing Schools to make up the bulk of the schedule. Ryan Preece is essentially sponsored by Gene Haas and then United Rentals. But I don't think that's a full sponsorship. He's not fully sponsored per se. Josh Berry, only just recently they announced that Sunny Delight is going to come back and do more races, but otherwise they don't have anything else. And Gagson doesn't have anything announced as of now. So it is a problem. It's interesting also because Gene Haas just fired Gunther Steiner. So who knows what he's trying to do with his Formula One program. So there's a lot of moving parts going on there with Tony Stewart and Gene Haas, to be fair. That is some Olay tackling. Oh my God, he's taking it to the house. What the hell was that? The guy just didn't even bother to tackle him. Bradbury just didn't bother to tackle him. And then I don't know what the other guy did that didn't even try. Oh, she's good. Hey, baby. Trey Palmer with the 56-yard touchdown as James Bradbury made an executive decision to not bother to tackle him. And Odd Bowles trying to win a playoff game, another playoff game, another coach that the Jets had that they fired. It's interesting how that seems to work. And now he's in Tampa Bay and pretty darn successful. I'm curious to see this replay. Byard, bad angle, and yeah, so that is a huge turn of events. That safety leads to a free kick and then touchdown, and now they're up 16 points, 15-9. 16 points, so 2 possessions still. So now what will Philly do? To be determined there. Okay, so ARCA had their test, the preseason test at Daytona. The combined results for the testing saw 4 Venturini Motorsports cars and the Joe Gibbs Racing, so 5 Toyotas in total, lead in terms of their times, overall times for one lap. Jake Finch over Tony Breidinger, Chris Wright, and Gus Dean. And then William Sawalich were the top 5. Patrick Emmerling, Andres Perez, who's racing the full season. Marco Andretti, trying to get certified to probably run a truck. Anthony Bello for Young's, Tanner Gray for second Joe Gibbs, or another Joe Gibbs car, rounds out the top 10. The ageless Dale Quarterly was 11th. Shane Van Gisbergen, driving for Pinnacle Racing Group, same thing, trying to get certified to run the Xfinity Series at Daytona. LeVar Scott, Andres Perez's teammate for Rev Racing, the two favorites for the season championship, because I'm not sure who Venturini's running full-time other than Amber Balkin, and William Salalch isn't going to be able to run every race, I don't think. So that's something to be seen. Looking through some of these other, Honeyman, who's going to be running Xfinity for Young's Motorsports, Andy Jankowiak, and Annunziata for McClure Motorsports, a Jersey guy, LeVar Scott, Jersey guy, Emmerling, of course, modified guy for many years, and been running Xfinity, Andy J, upstate New York. Dude, trying to see through Greg Van Alst, the defending race winner of the ARCA 200, coming back from serious injuries late last year in trucks, 24th. Trying to see anybody else that really stands out. Gil Linster, who comes from the NASCAR Europe series, trying to make it into NASCAR here, or first going with ARCA. Tim Richmond there. Amber Balkin, I mentioned. Justin Bonsignor, trying to get a start at Daytona in an ARCA car. The multi-time NASCAR Modified Tour champion, CJ McLaughlin, who brings out cautions every race in the Xfinity Series. And then, speaking of cautions, Sean Hingorani, this racing testing for Fast Track this time, after racing for Venturini Motorsports last year. Landon Huffman, racing or testing for Pinnacle Racing Group. And Takuma Koga, Sean Core, Connor Mozak, Tyler Reif, and trying to see anybody else. Yeah, that's about it. So nothing. We'll see who ends up racing or attempting to race at the day in the ARCA 200 here in a few weeks' time. There, the Roar Before the 24 takes place this coming weekend, and then so the time of the jam pack, and forces victory, the places, I'd rather take test session, the short 6 session GTV. So they had a qualifying, so they will, they will be qualifying these cars in this weekend prior to returning the following week for the Rolex 24 at Daytona. So the field 59 entries for the Rolex 24 at Daytona. In the GTP category, there'll be 10 cars, 2 cars from Porsche, Penske, Cadillac with both Ganassi Cadillac Racing and Whelen Engineering Cadillac, Wayne Taylor Racing with 2 Acuras, BMW with Team ALL as lead, if you would say, and Proton Competition and JDC Miller Motorsports with the 2 independent Porsche 963s. In LMP2, 13 entries, 12 of them Orcas, 1 Ligier for Sean Creek Motorsports. Crowd United Autosports comes over to the IMSA series this year with 2 cars. CrowdStrike Racing by APR lost last year in this race on a photo finish. Riley Motorsports with Gar Robinson and company move over to this class. We got AF Corsa in this field this weekend or this race, and Dragon Speed, Neo Racing, GT Pro, 13 entries, BMW, Corvette, McLaren, Lexus, Lamborghini, Aston Martin, Ferrari, Ford with the Mustang with Multimatic Motorsports, AMG, Mercedes-AMG with the Sun Energy One Racing because they're running 3 Platinums, Jules Gounon, Lucas Stoltz, Mauro Engel, along with Kenny Habel, and then AO Racing with their Porsche. And in GTD, 23 entries, largest class, obviously, of the group. And we'll give you more details on that and in the whole field, what takes place next week. Other news, it looks like Kaz Gralla might end up being driving for Rick Ware Racing as a teammate with Justin Haley. Andy Frozen Custard, who has been a sponsor for Anthony Alfredo in the past, will be sponsoring Xfinity Series champion Cole Custer for a few races. I mentioned CJ McLaughlin. He's going to be racing for RSS Racing partial schedule. Celsius stays with Colleague, and they will be the primary sponsor for AJ Allmendinger as he returns to the Xfinity Series. And you talk about, Bubba Wallace, John Hunter Nemechek, Corey Heim are going to be racing in the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge in the GT4 category. Global Industrial will continue to sponsor Austin Hill and also sponsor Kyle Busch this year. Connor Zilisch will eventually come to NASCAR. He's won in Mazda MX-5 Cup for Shay, why am I forgetting her name? Follow her on Instagram. For Shay Holbrook's team. He's won in any number of categories, but now he has been signed by Trackhouse Racing. I wonder where they're going to put him since they only have 3 cars. They seem to be hiring more drivers than they have cars these days, but he is a prospect, long-term prospect for sure, going on there. Xfinity Series, spotters, we talked on so there's that. I mentioned Gunther Steiner getting let go by Gene Haas. Alan Permain, the longtime Renault or the Enstone team higher up there, is going, it looks like, to AlphaTauri or whatever they'll be called. Toyota's making leadership change for their team or for their whole program. And Machine Gun Kelly is going to be performing at the Clash in halftime for whoever cares about that. I think that's about it there in terms of the racing news. Was there anything else that you saw, Josh, that I missed?
I don't think so. I think that's basically everything.
All right, so Will Chadron. I'll add. Going on NHRE.com just out of curiosity. Daniel Wilkerson will go and take over. He'll go from being a tuner back to being a driver, and he'll be taking over for his father in the Skag Power Equipment funny car. So that's interesting turn of events there. Daniel Wilkerson is a good crew, but his dad has been at it for so many years, won big races, and now he is going to retire and move over to. They're going to flip roles now. He'll be the tuner, and Daniel Wilkerson will be the driver. And Philly makes a field goal to make it, but there's a flag there, and another flag. There seems to be flags like every play. So that's NHRA. I'm trying to see what else, if there's anything else that really kind of stands out. We will move forward here. NFL Divisional Round preview and picks. First game on the docket will be the Houston Texans going to the Baltimore Ravens. Now, the Baltimore Ravens were the best record in the NFL. They destroyed the 49ers on Christmas. Lamar Jackson's going to be the MVP of the league, and almost a touchdown there. Good defense by Tampa Bay there. But CJ Stroud going on the road for a second playoff game. They they played really, really well last Saturday, but can they go on the road and somehow or another make the upset? That's the question. And I don't know if that's going to be the case. It's going to take a lot. Baltimore's got the week off and they're rested. They got probably get some guys back, and they'll be able to kind of make some more adjustments to their offense. Todd Monken and that defense has been one of the better defenses this whole year. So it's going to be a tough ask to go to Baltimore, and also Houston being a dome team, having to play. I mean, they do play outdoors against two of the teams. I'm trying to think, two of the teams in their division are outdoor teams, but are they able to go and deal with the cold? I mean, D'Amico Ryans, I'm sure that they'll be prepared, but can they handle the pressure? Personally, unfortunately, I would want Houston to win because of my rooting for D'Amico Ryans and because CJ Stroud is such a dynamic player. But I think Baltimore gets the win there. Do you see anything different, Josh, or you figure Baltimore gets to host the AFC Championship game a couple weeks' time?
I don't think I see anything different. I think Houston, it could give them a real good fight, but I think the defense is going to hold through for Baltimore, and I think CJ Stroud's done a really good job, but I think he is down a couple of weapons, mainly Tank Dell. So I'm going to go with Baltimore here. I don't really think it's going to be any other way different. So yeah, the Ravens go out, and the defense for Houston has been suspect at times throughout the season. I mean, they definitely did a good job against Flacco here, but we've seen they gave up 30 points to the Jets and everything. So that's one thing. They gave up. I mean, the Browns. I mean, granted, Stroud was hurt, so maybe that was a factor, but they did give up that game. Against the Browns in the regular season. I mean, I think it was in their own house, but still, that's still pretty big defensive domination there, or letdown that they had in that one. So, and we know what Lamar Jackson can do. It seems like he's just evolved to be balanced as both a runner and a passer, and is learned how to take when he needs to run, but also extend the play, but find the open man passing. So I think here for Baltimore, it's theirs to win, but at the same time, they've been on rest for a week now, and the starter's been on rest for 2 weeks. So I mean, it's not gonna be easy, I think, but I think they're gonna pull it out. So they just have to play ball, and I think Harbaugh is gonna be motivated because his brother won the championship in college, so he's gonna want to go out and try to go and get the NFL championship in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and now you see stuff going on the sideline for Philadelphia. Dallas Goedert going at Jalen Hurts, and Jalen Hurts basically not having any acknowledgement of it. Devontae Smith also just absolutely just staring into the abyss, just doesn't know what to do. Jason Kelsey looks like a guy that's about to retire, even though he is talking to his coach there. But Jeffrey Lurie does not look happy, and I guess the implosion, unless Baker Mayfield gives them the ball back and they score. Oh man, that was a tight window there, but he made that catch. Will they give them the first down? To be determined there, but we'll see what happens with that. Second game, The primetime game on Saturday night will be the Green Bay Packers going to Santa Clara and the Gene Field, Levi Stadium, to play the San Francisco 49ers, coming off of a couple of weeks of rest themselves. They didn't beat LA in week 18 with a bunch of backups, but they're coming back here this week after time off. For a good amount of this season, they were the best team in the NFC, one of, if not the best team in the NFL too. Brock Purdy is an MVP candidate and still should be. I honestly think Christian McCaffrey would be the MVP of the league, but they made it and they made it a quarterback award now. So I guess Offensive Player of the Year is best he's going to do. A lot of guys made the Pro Bowl. A lot of guys were all pros. There were some snubs on the 49ers side. Green Bay's defense has been, I mentioned earlier, they're not exactly considered one of the better defenses in the league. Oh, man, that was a big play, and they caught that one. So he's moved up. Mike Evans makes that big catch there. Big play. Slay gave up a big play just there. Can Jordan Love continue this run? Can the Green Bay Packers go and continue this run? A long-time rivalry over many years. Favre had, and Mike Holmgren had the match over San Francisco outside of the catch game. With Owens, they then with Aaron, it kind of went the other way. San Francisco's been able to kind of hold over on Green Bay since when Aaron was around. Raheem Mostert running for 20 yards and 3 touchdowns in the NFC Championship game. Was it 5 years ago? And but Jordan Love, he gets an opportunity here against one of the best defenses in the NFL. Mooney Ward, one of the probably should have been an All-Pro at defensive back, but they didn't put him up there. One of the best cover corners in the NFL, and they are just one of the best defenses. And will they be able to advance? It's been a pretty ugly week for higher seeds, but we talked about Baltimore, and for me, and it's not a bias at all, I honestly do believe the San Francisco 49ers have the things in place to go where they need to go, which is to Las Vegas and get the job done. So the first piece of that is to go and beat the Green Bay Packers on Saturday night, which they will do, in my opinion. But what say you, Josh, in regards to that game?
I mean, I think it's going to be a tough game. The Green Bay Packers, like we saw in this last game against the Cowboys, they ran the ball pretty well. But I think, again, the 49ers, I think, they got unfinished business with what happened last year in the NFC Championship, and I think they really want to get back to that point. Obviously Brock Purdy's put up a lot of numbers. You can question whether he's really a system quarterback or if he's for real and everything. But I think they're a step above the Packers in every way. So. I think as long as their offensive line can hold up in this game, I think they'll come out okay, and they'll come out with the win. So I think San Francisco goes out here, they win the game, and then they'll face whoever wins the Lions, and whoever wins this game here, more than likely the Bucks. So we'll get into that in a minute, but that's what I'm thinking as well.
Yeah, and it'll be both of those teams on Saturday, the number one seeds coming off of the time off, if there will be any rust. Something to look at, though. Both games should be interesting with the teams that are coming in. Young teams, teams of the future in both the Houston Texans and the Green Bay Packers. Right now, the Buccaneers are driving. Mike Evans has made a couple of big catches. They're now inside of the 30-yard line with 7 minutes to go. Yeah, Howie Roseman somebody that should probably be getting sent to, along with Sirianni. But so that's going on there. Looks like Tampa Bay, unless something crazy happens, is going to be moving on to play against the Detroit Lions in Detroit. Now, Tampa's had it hasn't been pretty tonight by any means, but in terms of their situation and with Baker Mayfield, with Mike Evans, a lot of these guys that are on this team, the question is, will they be able to keep up, put up enough points against Detroit's dynamic offense and all their playmakers? Jamison Williams was someone who had a lot of big plays on yesterday in the game, and he's a player who runs a 4.3 40 and all that stuff, and he's somebody who can get past the defense. And there was times during this game right now still going on that Tampa Bay didn't seem to have any answers for Devontae Smith. So Jamison Williams has a lot of similar characteristics to Devontae Smith. Running backs, running game is more dynamic for Tampa Bay, albeit, they're not exactly the most efficient running team. And Detroit has a lot of momentum going on. Jared Goff, he definitely wants to prove that he wasn't the issue as much as Sean McVay and Les Snead made him out to be. They did get the chip though, so I guess it doesn't really matter if it worked out the way they wanted to, and they got what they wanted. Slay looks like he's hurt there, so they're going to probably go to a commercial with 6:11 to go. Jason Kelsey still going, and something to do with his back there. So Detroit at home, with a little being able to stick around and have time to prepare, looking at both of these teams. MCDC wanting to take his team to the NFC Championship game would be against the San Francisco 49ers based on our picks. And whoever wins this game would have had a hard time against Detroit on best case scenario. But Tampa, if they get past this, which it looks like they will, it's a whole different bag of tricks to go against Detroit. Detroit's been able to have some big wins. They did go and take a huge L to Green Bay on Thanksgiving. They did get screwed against Dallas, which would have given them the number 2 seed instead of the 3. They would have ended up having to play Green Bay again if that had worked out that way. But either way, I think Detroit gets the victory and advances to go to the NFC Championship game, which would be insane for Detroit's fan base. I'll ask you, Josh, do you see anything different on that one?
No, I have to. I mean, we're good. I think the one we're going to end up getting different on is the Chiefs and the Bills. But yeah, I think again, I think the Lions probably should be the favorite here. The Bucks, I mean, they've done an admirable job here, but they've had issues with their defense throughout the year. I mean, they do have a good run defense, but their pass defense is not quite on the same level. And defense, or their offense, I think, for Baker Mayfield, I think he's going to have some trouble, I think, going up against the very physical defense in the Detroit Lions. So that's what I think is going to happen. I think it's going to be the Lions advancing to the NFC Championship game versus the 49ers. So that should be an interesting one. But one thing I will mention, we talked about Jacksonville and their coaching search, and Detroit also was a team that reset after 2020, and they traded away Jared Goff and everything, and then they traded for Jared Goff and gave away Matthew Stafford and everything, and hired Campbell and their GM and everything, and they've had their roster looks a lot like where Jacksonville wants to be, I think. So they made a lot of good picks over the last 3 years, and they haven't spent as much money in free agency, so they've done the draft and develop thing very well. Whereas Jacksonville hasn't drafted and developed as much, only in some positions, and they've spent a lot of money in free agency, and will need to retool the roster hopefully this off season. So that's one difference there, and that's something I think that if you're the part of the front office, whether you're Balky or Shad Khan, I think something you need to consider as far as the Lions go, as they continue to go. So we'll see how that plays out. But as far as this game, I think the Lions advance here, and they go would be a shocking upset if they lost, but I think they go here to the NFC Championship.
Yep, and with all of that, it leads to the box office matchup. One of the big rivalries, so to speak, in the NFL. Kermit the Frog, Patrick Mahomes, and the Kansas City Chiefs, for the first time in his career, have to go on the road in a playoff game, and he will go against Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. He threw a freaking how? He literally just threw it up for grabs, and somehow or another Chris Godwin caught that. That is insane. They all got shopping. They all got the shopping bags on their heads. The Philly fans are giving up. So this has been quite a weekend for fan bases that I think have bigger egos than they deserve. Philly's getting fucked hard. They're done. 32-9 now. But Buffalo and Kansas City. I've been going and talking about all these other ones, but I figure I'll switch it up here since it sounds like we're gonna differ here. So, what are you thinking, Josh, in regards to this matchup again between two of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and a matchup that we have seen many times over here in recent years? 14 seconds, where Buffalo thought they had it won. They were going to host an AFC Championship game, and then Kermie went and did what he had to do, and ended up winning. They ended up losing to they ended up losing to Joe Burrow. So that was nice. But what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, what I'm thinking here is if you look at, you got to look at their defenses, I think, first off. The Bills, they've got a lot of injuries on their defense right now. Their, linebackers are injured, and some of their defensive backs are injured. So that might tilt the game back into the Chiefs' favor. But, the defensive line on the Bills is, good, I think. And the Chiefs, even though they had offensive problems this year, at least in this past game, maybe it's because they went up against the Dolphins in a finesse team, but it looks like Mahomes was able to take the shorter throws, and not saying that he doesn't, but it was really from what they're known to do. They went and had a different game plan here, and they are also able to throw very aggressively, though, in those conditions. So, for Mahomes, if he does more of what he did in this past game, I think they go back to the AFC Championship game. He'll be on the road again, so and they'll go up against the Ravens. But if the Ravens win this one, Mahomes in that matchup, it's going to be interesting with the kind of the cards stacked against him as they have been all season, but could get interesting there. And then of course the Bucks got another touchdown, so stick a fork in the Eagles there. So what a collapse. But on the other end, Josh Allen, in the middle of the season they looked like they were on the verge of a collapse as well, but seemingly they've turned it around. I think they just started running the ball better, and I think they finally found their balance. I think that's what their problem has been, is they just never had enough balance with Josh Allen, and you'd go and do too much. So I think if he figures it out, I think passing wise, it's it's going to be interesting. So and I think the Chiefs have a better defense this year. they've again, Legarius Sneed on the back end as corner, and Chris Jones, Carl Aftis on the defensive line, linebacking core. So Nick Bolton as well. So that's going to be an interesting matchup there defensively. And this might be more of a defensive game, I feel like, than it has been in years past, like we saw earlier this year when the Bills came into Arrowhead and defeated them. So it's going to be an interesting one, but I'm gonna go with the Chiefs here. I hate to keep picking them, but I think I think they can go, and their defense is a little bit better than the Bills are at this point right now. So I think they advance the NFC Championship, against the Ravens.
As Dallas Goedert lays on the ground looking dead after Slay had to get carted off the field. And Dallas Goedert got a PI in the process too. So we'll see what happens with that. For me, I mean, I look at the momentum. You go and he got hit low. That's what it is. And hyperextended. Oh, okay. Yeah, there's a hyperextension there. They call that pass interference, I guess, because it's over past 5 yards. Okay, so he's walking off. For me, I mean, you look at momentum and the way that Josh Allen has played over the last 6 weeks. You got the good, the bad, and the ugly, and it could all happen in one game with Josh Allen. But he was able to come through today and play within himself, play a clean game, nice, simple, a couple 100 yards and 3 total touchdowns. And honestly, the momentum has been there with them. Yes, a lot of injuries for Buffalo that has affected them, but I also know that Josh Allen's there, and the Bills Mafia being able to be at home, knowing they beat Kansas City in Kansas City earlier in the season, albeit it took Kadarius Toney being a moron, but they were there, they were in the mix. They seem to always be in the mix against Kansas City in general. So if it's gonna come down, I mean, one thing I am concerned about is their kicking game, because today their kicker didn't seem to be all that good. Their punter pulled a hamstring, I think, or a groin or something. So that was also a problem. So their kicking game is interesting right now. We'll see how that works. Special teams, when it comes to close games and you're talking about defensive battles, special teams plays a big role. And Kansas City does have one of the better special teams. But even with all of that, I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills at home. And they would end up going to Baltimore for an AFC Championship game. Either way, I think the AFC Championship game would be quite interesting because of the quarterback matchup. But I'm going to say Buffalo there, personally. So we'll go while Phil picks Buffalo. So 3 out of 4 games we both picked the same. Say last week, 3 out of 6 games we picked the same. So we'll see what happens with that next week. So now, Josh, let us know what's going on in iRacing and what you're going to be doing in regards to that here this week in the Sim segment.
Yeah, of course. As we talked about at the top of the show, did the open wheels, or not? I keep wanting to say open wheels 500 because that's where I saw it from. But the US 500 at Fontana on iRacing, Race Spot TV, presenting the race. 2 splits. So the top split filled with drivers that or iRacers that compete in the highest level of iRacing and have compete in multiple special events and regularly compete in the broadcast split, the very top split of IndyCar. So was able to compete in that. In second split, ran in some good pack racing here at Fontana. It was very, very open setup, so I had to, find something, put something together, and it had a good setup, I think, in terms of speed, but handling, I think, being able to, because I like to run the top at Fontana, run the high line, keep the speed up there, but the bottom line is like where you really need to go to make passes, and after a tire run, as you got into a fuel run and the tires wore out, started to get, I mean, I think it's characteristic of Fontana anyways, but it starts to get really treacherous trying to run the bottom to make a move, and you can start to feel the car start to slide off of the corner, even in the middle lanes. So, you had to be really conservative and kind of make your moves early on and kind of hope other people would kind of start to stumble. If they try to run the bottom, you could run the top. So, that's what my strategy was, to kind of just stay at the top as long as I could and just ride that until the end. But lap 59, they had a caution come out before that. We had a restart in lap 59, and the cars in front of me started to stack up, and I was trying to time it so I could maybe make some passes on the bottom and also try to avoid potentially getting in a stack up. And so I went to the inside on the restart, which you can't do. You can't pass on the inside before it restarts. So I was also trying to avoid the penalty there before the start finish line. So I had to tap the brakes a little bit to try and not get that penalty, but end up getting run into the back, because I think somebody else had the same idea and ended up getting run into the back and then spun out and crashed into the wall. So that's okay. I mean, it's not a big deal. It's not, like we're racing for a prize or anything like that, or had to pay to, be in this and everything. And, first 500 mile, well, it wasn't a 500 mile race. It was a 500K actually, not a 500 lap. So it was a 156 lap race, but, first long distance IndyCar race in quite a bit, and haven't really competed on this large of a scale in a while in terms of field size and just the platform that we're competing on with RaceSpot broadcasting the race on YouTube. So, it was definitely hyper focused for this one, but and I could tell because when I stopped, I had a little bit of a headache for a bit, but yeah, just interesting race. A lot of pack racing throughout that event, but tire wear was a factor throughout, as I talked about. So that was interesting. Would have liked to get in a scenario where we could have had green flag pit stops, but I don't think they ever really came out to have any green flag pit stops. But was running in the top 10, so or just on the edge of the top 10 there. So. Would have liked to have been able to continue more, but, that just made, I don't know, maybe my mistake trying to veer to the inside before the restart there. Maybe could have just stayed patient and held my line and, try something, but, it is what it is. So we'll just have to, learn from that and move forward as we go forward here on the iRacing season in IndyCar. So, just glad to be back on IndyCar. With I mean, we've been racing in the past since the license had stopped, but on the official level, where now we get to actually run the IndyCar series schedule and run the Indy 500 and all that. Glad to have that back. So that's what's important here and everything. No matter who won the race or who didn't win the race. Just having the ability to compete like that in the game. I think that's important. And then also just, for outlets like RaceSpot and other, places, just to be able to broadcast races on YouTube or wherever without worrying about violating the rules of the license and everything, and not having a permission. Now that they can do it, they're free and they can, have that. I think it'll help the platform, and certainly maybe it'll help grow interest into the regular IndyCar series. And, if people get interested in the sim IndyCar, they'll get interested in the real life IndyCar. So, yeah, that's kind of the story there. And everything is cool to be on YouTube, I guess, for a little bit, even though it was just bits and pieces there. So that's cool. So glad to be in that and everything. So of course, also did run the regular iRacing IndyCar Open or fixed oval series as well, and ran at Pocono. So ran there a couple times and had some good results there. So yeah, that's all I did in sim racing this week or this past week. This next upcoming week is the Rolex 24 on iRacing. I don't know yet if I'll do it. I haven't really gotten in connections with anybody and everything, and I don't know what I want to do with my weekend yet. So yeah, it would be a commitment, and I would have to start practicing and everything for that this week. So if I do, so I don't know yet if I will, but I'd have to find a drive or something. And I did look around. I mean, there's plenty of people that are just there for the fun of it, and seemed very friendly to beginners. So we'll see, but would have to set aside some time to be able to do that. So we'll see. But yeah, of course, I did stream this past week for that US 500, so I can maybe catch all the way up until where the crash happened. Twitch TV/UCO2. So go in there and watch the streams and everything. So glad to be able to do that, and be able to compete with other people that are into IndyCar and be able to compete on that level. So yeah, of course, as always, Twitter, JP Huffine, and of course I already said the Twitch. So you can see all our hot takes there, see everything we have, see all the takes on football and sports and everything like that. So go in there and follow, and then of course the YouTube page where we have everything. Of course, our video last week where we incinerated the Jacksonville Jaguars on there at Grip Strip Podcast on YouTube. Go in there and subscribe, follow our page. So of course this one will be up there, and we'll have evidence of whether or not we'll be right in our predictions. So people want to comment on there and say, oh, we were wrong about this game or whatever, I guess they could potentially comment on there. But that's where our stuff will be at. So yeah, go and follow our page there and subscribe.
As Jason Kelsey gets off the field, he goes and I think that's his wife there. He's pretty emotional. Everybody was going up to him. I think it speaks a lot. I was pretty sure it was the end, but the way Kelsey looked there right at the end, and the emotion in his face, I think it will be the end of a great career for Jason Kelsey, one of the great leaders in the NFL, one of the great players in terms of being at the center position as well. It's going to be an interesting offseason for the Philadelphia Eagles. A lot of change going to be taking place there as Tampa Bay gets to go to Detroit. Baker Mayfield going for 330 and 3 scores, and great playoff performance. Second, that says they had posted only the fifth quarterback, who was the number 1 overall pick, to win for 2 different teams in the playoffs. So that's something. Credit to Baker Mayfield. Wonder if Tampa Bay will go and give him an extension. That's something to look at for sure. You can find me at PGMatthew28 on Twitter. You can find me at PhilipGMatthew28 on Instagram. Been on Facebook a little bit more recently. We'll see if I continue. I'm trying to sell stuff on their bowling equipment. Hopefully can actually talk about bowling, because it's been pretty shitty for a while this season. The teams I'm involved on are not so good, but trying to turn that around. Got other things going on. Made 6 months sobriety, so that's last week, so that was huge. And continuing on that front, and as always great to be on, and Josh and I going and doing this thing. It's been a fun deal, and we continue it over 200 episodes. So we'll be back next week for episode 204. Preview the Rolex 24 at Daytona. Preview the championship weekend for the NFL, conference championship weekend. And Rally Monte Carlo will be up there. Formula E. It'll be it's my birthday week too next week. So leading up to that, and another year around the sun. So we'll get into all that stuff next week on the Gripster podcast. So for Josh, I'm Phil. Take care. Thanks for listening and subscribing. Let your friends know about, or anybody who's interested in motorsports or football or whatever, about this show. We'll let you know about all those different things here on the Gripster podcast. So we will see you next time. Take care.